Happy Saturday. Yeah. We're doing a really brief intro, doing some remote viewing, year 2030 for humans from the future in this series. I'm going to introduce you to a being I've been working with. She's incredible. Her name is Andie. And we're going to talk about just anything that comes up in relation to the food industry, farming, healthcare, just a few things, let you meet her. This is just a brief introduction. And then we'll do a really deep dive of how things are going in the future from Andie's perspective. She's from Austin, Texas, and she does a lot of organic farming, and she comes into the cities to teach. She used to be a full-time elementary school teacher, and now she's retired. Now she does Reiki and runs her organic farm in a different city, obviously not Austin, but she comes in for what she has stated to me so far. She comes in for the farmers markets and whatnot. Kind of just a real normal, down-to-earth person. She's an incredible healer, but she doesn't like to toot her own horn about that. I really think you'll like her and you'll get a chance to ask her some questions. And it gives me an opportunity to show you how remote viewing actually goes, what it looks like. It's a little different from channeling. There's some portions of it where I do end up channeling if I can't hear or understand her. But generally speaking, she doesn't have to come in and take over my body or anything like that. She doesn't have to do that if she doesn't want to. We just talk back and forth, and I just share with you what she's saying. Yeah. So be a lot of fun. We'll be here for about half an hour. So get comfortable and enjoy the remote viewing. I'm going to pass this over to you, Anya. Here is your here's your mouse. She's laughing because yesterday we struggled.
We were passing the mouse.
We were passing the mouse, and the whole crowdcast just dumped us. Crowdcast was like, so no.
Like, just put it down there in front of me.
All right, let's go. Oh, let me know when you're ready.
Q&A is over there still.
Oh, well, I need the mouse back.
It's just on your screen, not mine. Magic.
There you go.
Perfect.
And here's your chat. You can pop open the chat and see people from there as well. They'll pop that open for you. Okay. Kind of like over here. Is that good?
Yeah, perfect.
And here's my mouse.
On the table.
On the table. Okay.
Okay, but just before she starts Patreon, start putting in some questions. Anything at all.
You won't need them much. She's a talker. All right, let's go. Southeast West Intertime Bubble 2020 30. Zone in 2030. North 300 miles. 2030. West 700. Texas. Zone in Texas 2030. Slow down, time warp. Central Austin 2030. Northwest perimeter of city. Zone in Andie. There we go. She must be on her farm today because we're zoning in. Straight through the sunflower part of the farm, just like typical. I piss off her dogs every time. Here comes Jed. He is, Andy's dog is pit bull mix. Barking while wagging his tail, running fast. Never can tell if he's going to bite me or lick me or jump up. Okay, he sees me. He knows who I am. Good. Happy doggy. Stop jumping. Go get Andie. She hears the barking. She's coming out onto her porch. So I'm just walking up the dirt road now to her porch. Hear wind chimes. She always has the most beautiful wind chimes because she taught music the majority of her years as an elementary school teacher. She said, "What are you doing back here? Don't you get enough of me?" Okay, Andie, we have some people here with us today. You know, just a couple thousand, no big deal, maybe minimum that'll see this. So hi, a couple thousand people's worth of friends and soul family. She said, "Oh, unexpected guests. I don't have enough jam or tea for all of you." We're just going to sit on the porch. She's got a few rocking chairs out there. She just made up some sun tea that she said would be ready the last time I saw her. I think we're going to get some tea. She said, "You just don't get enough of the future, do you? Doesn't look as bad as you thought it was going to be." So I'll just give you a little bit of what she's saying about herself. She wants to remind you of some of the things you patrons already know on my Patreon channel, that she is a retired elementary school teacher who substitutes now, still teaches music to 5th and 6th graders primarily. And she does private lessons as well for singing out of her home. And she is an organic farmer, primarily with herbs and on berries. And we got a sunflower field as well. So we have the sunflower field, we have berries of various kinds, and we have different types of medicinal herbs that she says that she makes soaps out of and brings to the organic parts of the farmers market there in Austin and around the outskirts that have been starting really soon, around early summer, late spring. She says they start up with the organic stuff and farmers markets for all the farmers. So she comes to them and makes most of her living for the year from several markets, not just Austin, but all over Texas. She also has expanded her reach in her organic farms to a farm out in California and does some markets there. And she's got some employees that run that farm and some family members that make the soaps, make the medicinal tinctures and elixirs. She does elixirs as well, and brings them out to the markets there, as you know, during the season. So she also wants to tell you a little bit about how healing has changed, because she is a Reiki master. She is a QHHD practitioner. She wants to become a BQH practitioner, but hasn't done that yet. And she has studied Qigong for about, she says, the past several years. So there's a lot to say about working with the elements and working with the 4 directions. She says in general that not a lot has changed, except that there was something crazy that happened, because upon the next term, when you enter the next term for presidency in the US, there were a bunch of crazy things that happened there, with someone passing away, and the person who took their position, their role was not, no one thought that that person was going to be helpful to the US, and they were. So that's something that Americans need to know, is that if you, in this term or the early next term, have a president pass away, not to worry, that there will be an appropriate replacement that shocks you in what they can do. And there's something that changes in Congress as well, insofar as the Speaker of the House. There are, it's like this, she calls it a domino stream of deaths in the White House, unfortunately, particularly for Speaker of the House and Congress and different things like that, have either illnesses or things that make them kind of take a rest, not necessarily that they're all dying, but they're resting. And there are some things coming about that are behind the scenes that don't come up to the public eye, that cause a lot of the speakers and the congressmen and congresswomen to kind of, there is like, what do you call that game, she says, where you the music goes and then you stop. It's an old kids game that she used to teach. Musical chairs. It's like musical chairs in Congress due to illness and some lies that were uncovered in our political system. So our political system is under great collapse 5 years from now, from your time, she says. But she also says that after the musical chair situation settles down and some truth comes out, that things will calm down for more diplomacy and more awareness of human rights, on all balance of some of the fears about gun rights and shootings in schools, a lot of balance and bills coming out to help you there, that actually are approved and agreed upon by both the Republicans and the Democrats. And that's like a first. It's history being made that they agree upon this for once. So that's good. And it's more of, if she had to label it, she says it's more of a less totalitarian perspective in American governments and how it affects people in 5 years from now, and a lot more, by the time you get to her time frame, a lot more listening to common folk like me and you and all of us today. So a lot of just normal people helping to change laws. So what happens is the collapse of an old structure that isn't working anymore. Everyone's afraid. Mortgage interest rates go through the roof. But then when it settles, when the dust settles, which it does right around, she said it started to settle about 6 months ago in her time frame. And then everyone got really excited about investments. Rates balanced again. The interest rates slowed down. A lot of the poor decisions that were being made in the Silicon Valley banks were balanced out, and the society seems to be more recovering at this time than anything else. So people are getting their jobs back, but it's different in a sense that there are more self-employed people than ever before in my time frame, she says. So more self-employed people, less interest rates, when you're buying a house, Bitcoin and Ethereum do something weird. They bottom out and then rise really quickly. So that huge bottom happens around 2029, she says. And then you need to invest, if you are going to invest in something like that, it's really, that's the time. That's the time. And then things are going to rise really quickly. And by her year in 2030, it's like you would have wished that you had got a hold of some Bitcoin and Ethereum. But don't hold your horses, because it only does well for 2 years before it completely bottoms out of the sky again. So she said, I know I'm talking too much and you knew that was going to happen. So we're going to give you a chance to talk now, she says. Anybody in
okay, we have some questions for you, Andi. Hi, Andi. My name is Anya.
Hey, what's up? She said.
Mindy has a really good question here that I love. How are the bees in your area and in your time?
Yeah. In Texas, we instilled some laws against certain noise ordinances. We have in the cities in particular, not as, even though we have noise ordinances, it's not as stringent, and we recognize via a lot of different scientific studies and platforms that informed us that our bees were dying due to our loud noises. And that was the biggest problem in our area. But we have many scientific researchers are doing these studies to determine the effects of these terribly loud noises. And you have to, I know that Harley has changed some of their laws on their muffler systems. You're only allowed to have one muffler. You can't have, we're going into some legislature that bans those type of cars that just, we all know the ones that blare down the street, like in the middle of the night, making tremendous noises, scaring off all the bees. And construction cannot be, new construction in our area. There's a lot of people fighting in legislature about how new construction can be put up and when they can make noise and when they can't. And the bee population is incredibly low, and we're aware of it. And most of the United States is doing something about it. Most, I think that I know Mississippi, Kentucky, some of the Carolinas are still struggling. Some parts of Southern Texas are really fighting this legislature. We know you want your recreational vehicles. We know you like to have fun, but we need a planet to have fun on. So, so there's a lot of uproar about this. And again, I'm not making a political statement. I vote independent typically. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not in anything. I'm just a person who wants the planet to live on. I don't have any far-fetched views. If you want a gun, have a gun. If you want to be gay or straight or anything, I don't give any flying F's about it. That's what she said. But I do want bees because we need a planet to live on if you want to have all those things in the future. So we have temporarily created, the US in particular, every state is working on noise ordinances. And that's where we've been starting.
Thanks for that, Andi. That's pretty cool. Bahia has a question. What is the best advice that you can give to the permaculture homesteaders of 2023?
Permaculture?
Yeah.
Okay. For 2023 right now, you need to learn to cleanse, purify, and store water. And a lot of that technology is going to be available to you in just a couple of years in your time. So if you can imagine by at worst, maybe 2026, but probably late 2025, you're going to have access to a lot of these systems, and they don't cost a lot of money. You're going to have access to a lot of different systems that also purify air, and that's because you need it. You need that. and basically you need to continue with, think about how, I know Pamela just channeled some of the ancient Mayans. Think about how they stored and purified water. You can do this underground. You can create cisterns underground, and so that you can, when you get water and you purify it, if you're purifying your rainwater, it can store down in there, and then you can pump it up and throughout your properties, and then you can, in the same way that the ancient Mayans did, move that water through your property based upon different types of shelving systems with the land. If you shelve it and move the water down the shelf of the land shelf there. So you need to think about your gardens in the way that we do, because it's very flat here. We have to build particularly our herbal medicine flower beds and plant beds in ways that are like this. And then the water moves down and across, down and across, down and across. We don't really use sprinkler systems. Everything is drip. Sprinkler systems are exhausting and waste a lot. We want to make sure every last drop gets to our plants. It's super hot here and drought is in full effect. So we're very limited. Our farmers, like such as myself, are given a lot more leeway to utilize water. But standard suburbs have by now at this point began to cut back significantly, and most of you are your homeowners associations are listening their rules on having all the green grass, and you have more rocks and desert looking environment. And some of you are already doing that now, as opposed to wasting grass. Most of you are already growing in Texas. You're already growing your own organic foods on your properties. And that's because the drought in central US spreading all the way to the west has just been incredibly bad. And we had a few good years, maybe this year in your time zone, 2023 and 2024, from Texas all the way to the west of the US. You had some good years. You'll have another good year, but that'll be about it. And now you need to really start looking at conserving, purifying, storing, and distributing water in the same way that the ancient Mayans did, by effectuating its use, distributing it properly on the land, and shelving the land, as I was talking about, is going to be very important for modern permaculture.
Thank you so much for that detailed answer. That's really cool. Maria would like to know, is canning popular in 2030? And if so, is it easy to get canning supplies? Are they readily available?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, canning has become incredibly popular. Almost everyone is doing it. And you need to start now. You need to start canning your vegetables because they last for a while. You need to start learning how to do that. Our environmental scientists are saying that come 3 years from now, we're facing even deeper drought. And by 2032, that we're going to have the worst drought in the central US and western US that we've ever experienced. And we're preparing for it by canning food, learning how to run our properties, and just learning all this now.
Thank you for that answer, Andie. Another patron would like to know, she says, I'm starting to plant fruit trees and different berries. How is the weather in Texas in the last 10 years? And what should she do to be successful and have enough for her family and friends in your time?
Oh, it's just hot. And it's become a lot more dry, and it was already, but it's just a lot more dry. And we are getting less humidity every year. So it's very dusty. And we've built a lot of worm beds. We save water appropriately in cisterns, just like the ancient Mayans did. And there was a reason why Pamela chose to channel a human from the past as an ancient Mayan before she found me, is because I wanted to talk to you about how you can do the same, and just remind you that it's all over the internet. You have so much access to knowing how to do this, and you're going to need that.
Thank you very much, Andie. Pearl has a question, and she wants to know what you think about Pamela coming to your place, telling you about all these people that are listening, and do you think it's just woo stuff, or what do you think about all this?
So I started watching her channel when I got my Reiki certification back in 2018. So I'm familiar with her already. But it was just a surprise just to have someone show up that, on your property and not give you any particular advance notice. I think my dog about mauled her to pieces, and we had to prevent that from happening. And now the dog loves her and gets more excited than angry. So I think we're okay.
That's pretty cool. Another question here is, can you tell us a little about electroculture? And can we put an antenna at the corner of a plot, or do we have to put one on each plant?
You can put one at the corner of the plot if you have a plot that is more triangular shaped, than rectangular shaped, because of the way that the sun goes down. It's interesting because we have a lot more access to sun than we ever did, but we don't harness the energy appropriately in electroculture. Now we've learned to harness energy more appropriately, and more copper, more distribution of such copper. But you can cover, say, a 2-acre plot with just putting it at the northeast corner if your plot is triangular versus rectangular.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you for that. Angela would like to know, she says, hi, Andi, are there any major changes in the healthcare by your time? And a second part of that from somebody else is Medicaid still working okay?
Medicaid works better than it ever did. There's a lot more because of the necessity of it. Our governments have poured a lot more money into Medicaid. So Medicaid's working better. It's easier to get approval. The idea of the poverty limit has changed, and it's been easier to get approvals because, who legitimately only makes like $26,000 a year or whatever when they have a family? Not many do, so they weren't qualifying based upon those incredibly stringent standards of insurance. So that has shifted significantly. So it's easier for a normal person with a family, I'd say, who's making like $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year to get Medicaid. And that's a huge shift. No one ever thought that would happen. No one's going to believe me. But it's because of the extreme drought. Is because people didn't really know how to shift. This shift that has been happening this year in particular, from people working for someone else into primarily following their dreams and working for themselves, that's only this year that people are starting to really, like, almost everyone. And I say that in such a, I know that sounds like a broad sweeping generalization, but I promise you it's not. I can talk to any neighbor on my street and they're not going into offices. They're not going into plants and industries. So unfortunately, those type of jobs aren't as available. Most people grow their food or get it from local farmers. You've become much more independent in your state governments and in your local governments. And almost every town has a co-op. So most people either work for the co-op, and they exchange a lot of services without even having to pay because they're making their own money and being happier doing it. But you're not happy about it. You're terrified. You're going into it with a big scarcity mentality. And as you know, the universe responds to that. For those of you who understand anything in hermetics, you understand that what you are energetically putting out into the world, the universe is responding to that. You can't start out with that, but you are. And that's why you're terrified and you keep going into self-employment and then going back to your old ways of working and then going into self-employment, but then becoming afraid and returning back to jobs that you don't care for. Well, you've stopped that. Almost everybody in my town, and I say that not so sparingly, a lot of people, 80% of Austin is self-employed. You never would have thought that would happen in such a short amount of time. So instead of saying things when given projections of a timeline, look at it like, do I want this timeline? This is something I can tell you from Qigong and from Hermetics, from energy manifestation. When you understand what you want and you stop saying, well, that timeline's too good to be true, or that timeline's too hard. Just choose what you want. Take what you want and do something out of it. Create it. Make it yours. And stop saying it can't possibly happen. We are operating in a very positive timeline. But from what I can hear about projections from my future, say by 2032, we might have some interesting things happening that you need to be prepared for. You need to be prepared for what's coming in 2032 with natural disasters and wars. And even war is different by 2032 from some of the projections of our experts looking at how we might be by 2032, 2033. From just Mother Earth doing her thing, it looks fairly bad. And then the wars that are coming are different types of wars that try to limit your rights, but you're not going to have any of that. You are going to find a middle ground for yourselves, and many more people are speaking out and changing law, just normal people like me and you. But you need to be really strong and courageous, and understanding that you have to trust the soul and its capacity to care for you and to make you self-sufficient. Because if you don't, and you keep going back to jobs you hate, these soul-sucking situations, and saying, well, that's all that's available to me, you're not going to do well in my time frame. You're not going to do well by 2030, because everybody's self-employed by 2030 in my whole city. And just looking out, not just at Texas, but people who are hanging on to the old ways, you're going to need to make a shift. You need to follow your passions now. About 50% of America by this year is either self-employed or deeply exploring it and on the tail end of leaving their old jobs. So where are you in this right now? That's why Pamela and I chose to talk to you today, is because you need to hear that there are some incredibly positive things coming and scary things coming if you don't know yourself, if you don't know how to run a business. So prepare, don't be scared, no fear. Just awareness, and jump into your dream now. Do it while you can. Get a grasp on this now.
Thank you for that, Andi. That's really good advice. I have a question here from another Andi. They want to know, how is international travel in 2030? Pamela has told us that in a year or two from our time that the poles shifting will affect planes.
Yeah, that did happen. I remember around 2026, we started having some pole shifts that, from what I remember, the airlines stopped in their tracks for quite some time, and they had to adjust their current planes. They had to adjust their navigation system. Ships had to adjust their navigation systems and how they operate. All of the geomagnetic energies of the earth were responding differently to the equipment, and the equipment had to be operated differently, adjusted to handle these shifts. And then by the time they adjust it, then it shifts again. And that's it's okay. It just stops for anyway. In my timeline, I remember that it stopped for like a week or two, and then it would be back up after then for a little while. But unfortunately, it brought some fear, because when you stop, the entire airlines and ships and things that rely upon these navigational systems for even a week or two, that instills fear, and you don't need to be afraid, because it can be easily resolved. So hopefully, if you spread this information, I don't know, if this becomes more visible in your near future, people need to understand, don't just stop traveling because you're afraid of the equipment failure. It's going to come back, and then it stops for a while, and we have to readjust, and then it comes back. But planes can be grounded for short amounts of time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Andi. Jackie would like to know, for energy and homes, is free energy coming about?
It depends upon what you mean by free. Nothing in this world is free, and it's not anywhere in my timeline. Some people really still appreciate operating on the electric grids, but for the most part, the droughts are so bad, particularly in the central U.S., Texas, Oklahoma, spanning all the way out into Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, at least Western and Southern. There are some places in the world that have such extenuating drought, New Mexico, so many places, that you cannot rely upon this electricity. It just goes out. It just causes for blackouts, where we're having blackouts, those who are still on the electric grid. But I'd say about a third from what I looked at last night with the current studies, about a third of people in Texas are already off grid and utilizing a new product that has been invented. It's an invention that's out right now. There are a couple of different inventions that got approved, and we were surprised. And it's not free because you have to buy the product or get a loan for the product. And of course, it's expensive because it doesn't have, these are just smart people not funded by bigger corporations. They don't have angel investors. They don't have that kind of funding, but normal people who decide to do something different, and they've created interesting units for air conditioning, for example, that doesn't rely upon electricity. They've created something that also takes and creates electricity from water, from generating water, and that runs it through their homes. And they then run it through the air itself, and then it sparks something from the geomagnetic forces that are different now, that are starting to be different than ever before. Maybe some environmental scientists can take a peek at this channeling and look at the accuracy of it and see if they can think it's feasible. But there are a couple of people who aren't necessarily scientists, but just had some bright minds, and they got their inventions approved and patents created when they didn't think it was going to happen. And now it's not free. You have to buy it for yourself because it costs money for, the self-employed person to create it and to hire a team to get it approved and tested. And it's going to cost you, at least a couple grand when it first comes out, but it'll be out in a couple of years. Both of those inventions will be out in just a couple of years from your time frame now. And you'll be able to purchase that or get a loan out for it. And then it'll get to a more regular price. It's right now it's 2030. In my year, it costs about $400 to get each of those machines. So it drops to a normal price at some point. It's all over the market everywhere.
Okay, thank you very much, Andie. I'm just going to close with one last question,
Mm-hmm.
and we will be able to talk to you again later in the week.
You don't like my tea?
I do like your tea, and I'm sure Pamela is loving it. But I'm looking forward to more tea during the week.
Okay.
So the question I have is, what happened to the big homeless population? Did we help them?
Still a big problem, she says. And she's given me a lot of different images here in my mind about it. I love working with healers because we can do a little bit more channeling. But it's pretty bad, she says, and particularly in the larger cities. But one thing that you don't expect to happen is that a lot of these empty high-rises in the big cities in Chicago, Seattle, portions of LA and San Diego and New York City, a lot of those unoccupied high-rises become apartment buildings, and some of them are HUD friendly. So you may know what that means. That's the housing authority that provides things for a cheaper rate and keeps the rate affordable for people, and you're not allowed to raise the rent in those buildings. And some also have been approved for homeless shelters as temporary shelters and programs to get them on their feet. So we are in the US making some headway on that, but it's compared to homeless levels where you are in your current time frame, it's exponentially worse. But we've been forced to create programs to help people.
That's good that there's some programs starting.
Yeah, everywhere there's some programs starting.
Oh, that's really cool. Thank you for answering the questions today, Andie.
You're welcome.
And we'll talk to you during the week. I'll go back to Pamela.
Well, don't let Jed bite you on the way down out the path. He doesn't want you to go. So now, cosmic portal north 320 degrees. West. So now. Zone in Colorado. Zone in south. Zone in Utah. Zone in Colorado border. Zone in West. Stop. Zone in. In. All right. All right. Thank you guys for showing up today. I appreciate you. Hope you had a really good time. And if you want to go deeper, we're going to go way deeper with Andie with our questions about our future in the next 5 years. We're going to go way deeper really soon, coming up next week on Thursday. So I've got the link for that if you want to join us and ask her your questions and get to know your future better for year 2030. We're going to be talking to her again next week on Thursday. All right. I'll see you soon. Thank you so much.